connected my computer, and we are recording. Pattie, what is the correct way to pronounce your last name? Cornute?
Cornute.
Cornute. Wonderful. And so I found you by sort of doing some Googling and researching, and I think that Google is a lipedema patient's best friend.
It was for me.
Tell me how your journey began. Did you always have a struggle with a fat disorder? Did you even know what it was? Let's go back to the very beginning.
Yeah, I did not know what lipedema was until I got diagnosed in 2007. And for a long time, before that, I was always pretty active person. And I remember, in college, I was like a size 4 on top and a size 12 on the bottom. And I just it looked like two separate bodies kind of stacked on top of each other. And then when I met my husband in, 1992 is when we started dating. And we did all kinds of stuff together, and I was a gym person. I would go to the gym and I would do the elliptical and treadmill and, everything everybody else typically does the gym, but I would just be there forever because I really liked it. I could put headphones on. If I have music, I can do anything. And so I would be doing that and kind of surprised that my body didn't kind of match the stuff that I was doing. And my husband at the time was like, I don't understand it. Unless you're locked up in the closet somewhere eating food, I don't see it. What you eat, what you do doesn't equate, to what your body shape is. So I started asking my primary doctor about it. Is there something wrong with my, my thyroid or my kidneys or, whatever. She was always really great about wanting to look into it. She's like, let's test it, so that was kind of cool about that. And she understood because she also went to the same gym that I go to. And she was like, I see you there when I get there in the morning and I see you there when I leave. And she didn't understand it either. But every time she would run a test, it would come back that I was healthy and this was functioning properly and that was functioning properly. And it never seemed like anybody but myself was like, well, okay, but what is going on? It doesn't make sense. They're like, oh, you should just be happy that everything's healthy.
And yet, though it was frustrating, it wasn't debilitating.
No, not at that time. Not at that time. Then I started, like every summer I would get really swollen legs. And so she had me on a diuretic. And I remember I would come home and like my trouser socks would just leave this really deep indentation at the top of it where it like was just under my knee. And I would ask her about, what's going on. She's like, oh, it's just the summer. Just try to elevate your legs a little bit. And started more testing. And I didn't find out that there was something different until I had my daughter. I was, in 2004, I had a C-section and I was in the hospital, and one of the nurses in the hospital asked me about a mark on my leg, and she had questioned if I'd ever had cellulitis there. And I didn't know what she was talking about. And so when I left the hospital is when I started to notice my legs didn't just look like larger versions of a normal shaped leg. They had changed. They had become column shaped, and they didn't look like, a thin ankle and gradually going up. It was like a big cutoff at the ankle. And then I had a big overhanging section. And that really changed after the birth and the C-section, and the pregnancy and all of that. So that's really when my symptoms spiked. And then from then on, it just continued to progress.
So what did that progression look like? You went from being someone that could go to the gym and do a workout, not seeing the kind of results that you would normally expect from that kind of activity, to then seeing your physical legs change. And how did that play out in everyday life? And for how long before you got some help?
Right. Well, it was 2004 when she was born, and I didn't get diagnosed till 2007. So for like I started to ask her questions about the misshapen part of my leg. And I started to inquire, and we did more testing. And that was that whole phase when we were trying to figure it out. Um, and then I just got frustrated, and I was on Google, and I was Googling big legs and hit images. And it was like somebody had my legs up on Google. And I was like, those are my legs. And I clicked on it, and it was a blog by a woman named Patricia Washburn. And it was, I think, called Big Legs or Big Leg Woman or something like that. And she just had such valuable information. I just went to her blog and just read everything I could. And I grabbed my husband and I told him about it. And we're both like light bulbs going off that, all right, this is what this has to be, you know? And so then I went back to my doctor and I got like stonewalled. It was kind of like, well, you know, you'll have to find a specialist for something like that. And it was like a total change in her personality. And I never quite understood what that was all about. So I went back to Google, and one of the things I had read on the blog, I think, talked about getting MLD from a VODR trained therapist. And so I went and started Googling that, and I found that they had a wonderful link where you could find a therapist in your area. And I found one that was like 45 minutes away. Made an appointment, went in, and within a couple minutes, she's like, oh, you have primary lipedema and secondary lymphedema, probably because it took you so long to get properly diagnosed. So that's how I
feel when you first of all saw those photos and could identify yourself, and then when you got a diagnosis, what did that do to your psyche?
at, you know, you're just like, thank God there's an answer. I'm not crazy, you know, I'm doing all the things that everybody in my life and in, you know, my family had been doing. Nobody in my family has this. So I didn't have any kind of indication, oh, that's what Auntie A or so-and-so has, you know, it was just me, you know, I was the only one that kind of looked that way. My mom and my sister had great legs. You know, I was always like, I don't get it. So at first you're really excited. And then when you slowly start to find out that there's no cure for it, that it was, you know, first diagnosed in 1940, and you're like, I don't understand, why is there nothing further? Why did my doctor not even know about that? You know, that's frustrating. So there's a level of frustration that comes, but initially you're just so happy that you know what it is that you have going on.
So naming it gives you some sense of power. This trained therapist, what kind of protocol did they put you on?
She was really great because she said, you know, you're going to have to start complete decongestant therapy. And she knew, you know, currently that's still the same protocol that you're given when you go in. And she had said, you know, you're about 45 minutes from where we are. There's a place that's closer to you. So she was very kind to give me the name of another therapy treatment. And it was in, I think it was about 20 minutes away from my house, because they said you're going to have to come like every other day for like 3 months, you know? So that began, and I would go in and they would do the measurements and the MLD, and then they would do the bandaging. And, you know, you have the bandages and you get halfway to your car and they're down around your ankles. So that was always fun. So there's a lot of frustration at first. I remember thinking that when she said you have to have MLD, and I went into that first appointment and, you know, they barely touch you, I left being so angry. I was like, there is no way that is going to do anything, you know, because you're so used to trying to do all this stuff. And then you have this very light touch and you're like, how is that supposed to make this better? And then when I went back and she started doing the measurements and I was seeing real reduction in my measurements, then I was on board. I didn't care that it was 20 minutes. It would have been 45 minutes away. I would have been okay with it. You know, it was just adapting shoes to, you know, be able to accommodate the bandages. And it was just all that kind of, you know, learning curve, learning what works. And
I want to talk a little bit about the psychological impact of having lipedema, because this is a disease, and I don't want to put words into your mouth, but people that I've talked to feel misunderstood and judged. There's, you know, the bystander that will look and say, oh, that person just needs to go on a diet. And there's this sense of shame of what's wrong with me, I would imagine. But I'm not going to put words into your mouth. What is going on in the heart and the mind of a patient with lipedema, and maybe not even a patient, just someone who has this condition and maybe it's not even diagnosed?
Right. Initially, that is exactly how I felt. You do feel judged. Fat bias is everywhere. You know, you can't even go into half your doctor's appointments and find a chair that you can sit down in comfortably because they all have arms on them. So it's like everywhere you go, not only do you feel like you don't fit in with the way everybody looks, but you literally don't fit in places, and you start to like kind of dysmorphic type of tendency that you kind of feel about yourself because you're so different than what you're seeing and what you appear to be as normal in our society.
And yet, when you look at society and you look at the statistics, over 10% of women in America have this condition.
Yeah. And so as I went on and I started to advocate for myself and started to try to find answers and things that worked for me, then that switched. I don't feel like I'm this totally different thing and I'm hideous and it breaks my heart when new people come in and they've just learned about it and they're so harsh on themselves, and it's, hate talk towards themselves. And I'm always trying to, promote a healthy way of talking, not just, about everybody else in the group, but about yourself, because you don't realize if you're saying that about yourself, that there are people in the group who are at a later stage than you. And while you don't mean to offend them, you're offending them. It's harder for a later stage to feel like they're able to do something to combat it. So it's a constant struggle, because you also don't want to discount what the newer people are having to say. It's valid for them. We were there, we know what that was like. So it's a fine line of trying to get them to be more positive in the way they talk about themselves and how that transfers to the later stages as well.
So, two keys. One is a diagnosis and getting therapy that helped. The second I'm hearing is you found a tribe.
Yeah.
What are these special interest Facebook groups or blogs, these people that really get lipedema because they've got it? What has that meant to you to have a community like that?
Community is really everything. I think finding support, whether it's, within your own family or your own friend circle, or if it's online, it's really critical. It's, I would say, right up there with the actual, complete decongestive therapy. I think it's a huge help to have somebody who gets you, who you can have a conversation with, and you're not having to explain why this hurts or why it's uncomfortable, or they just get it. You feel seen. I remember the first conference I went to for FDRS, walking into the room full of women that had lipedema. I was blown away. I was in tears. It was an emotional, experience. And I was just like, oh my God, I want to do this every day. I want to live in a community where there's all kinds of women that look just like me, and we can have regular conversations. And that actually started me looking for, outside of lipedema, for groups that I could belong to that were more body positive. And that really helped me with the lipedema side. Just plus size fashion ladies and plus size fitness ladies. And I want to see bodies that look like mine doing things I want to do. So that really was a key for me to help with my feeling better about myself and advocating more for a positive experience. We can't change what we have. And unfortunately, right now, there's no cure for what we have. And we've got to do what we can do. And we find that what we do is so different in results. We present differently. Like my stage 3 looks different than somebody else's stage 3, but we also respond to things differently. We respond to supplements differently. We respond to the ways of eating differently. We respond to exercise differently. Some people can't do it at all. Some people are running marathons, you know, it's so different. And it's very frustrating when you're first starting out and you come into the group and you're like, all right, what do I do to lose all this lipedema? And I'm like, you can't. It doesn't go away with diet and exercise, but you can improve and you can slow down your progression. And that's what is so important to get across.
When we talked on the phone, you said something really key. This population will do anything not to get worse.
Yeah.
And there was a conception, if you exercise, you'll trigger it worsening.
Yes.
You're dealing with that, right?
Yes, that was what we were told when I was diagnosed in 2007. That was the common advice we were all given. It was complete decongestive therapy, which really is to treat lymphedema, in my opinion. You know, it's how to get your lymph moving, which is really important, but it's not pinpointing how do I fix the lipedema, you know? And so everything we heard at that time was, don't exercise, you're going to make it worse, you know, and you take that to heart and you listen and you're like, oh no, I got to stop doing that. I'm going to stop going to the gym. You know, you come home from work and you put your legs up, just put your legs up as much as you can. That was, you know, primarily.
What was your life? What was your life like?
My life started fine. You know, you have a brand new baby and you're running around and you're doing all the stuff. And I took some time off from work. I had a good situation where I could, you know, take that time. And then gradually, as you stop, you know, if you're a regular healthy body or a lipedema body, if you stop doing things, exercising and taking care of your body starts to slow down. It starts to not have that strength, not have that mobility, not have that flexibility anymore. And you really will see you sliding into your, you know, I lost almost all my mobility. I was, you know, barely able to stand. My job, I would park in the parking lot. It was a short distance to the front door and I would just get me to my desk. Just get me to my desk. That's all I need to do. And it was a pretty stressful job. So I had a lot of added stress in my lifetime. And that is a big trigger for me personally. Stress really does exacerbate my symptoms. And then at the end, I wouldn't even get up to go to the bathroom. I would just stay at my desk all day, 8 hours. I'd be there. And then time to leave, I'd just get to my car. I'd come home. I'd stop at the end of the driveway to get the mail because I couldn't walk the length of my driveway to get the mail. And then I'd come in the house. I'd put my feet up. I wouldn't have any energy to do anything with my family. And you know, my daughter was growing up and she'd have things that she'd have to do with school and dad would have to go do that because I couldn't stand for that length of time. You know, I couldn't walk the distance that we needed to walk. And I remember just being fearful that I'm not going to be here for her. You know, where is this going to go? Because it's not going to get better. I'm not able to do anything. And I remember it was Halloween and my husband had to take my daughter trick-or-treating. And I sat in the living room with my feet up and I just sat there and cried because I'm like, you know, that's something we always did as a family, you know, that's a big part of who we were. We're big, huge fans of, you know, dressing up and having parties and going trick-or-treating with her. And to see that just slipping away and not feeling like I was part of their lives. And my poor husband, pretty much a single parent, you know, harsh on him as well, you know. I'm sorry.
No, this is very touching and very powerful because the woman I'm looking at right now is not the woman sitting in that chair crying.
No.
So what happened?
I started to question why we were listening to this because I had been active my whole life. And my husband is a very athletic person. He's a, you know, 4th degree black belt in karate. He teaches MMA fighters and other, you know, karate students. And he started doing CrossFit became a CrossFit instructor and started teaching those athletes, you know, CrossFit to cross train to get them ready for their fights. And so every Saturday he would be going off to train his athletes. And one day I said, I want to start training with you. I want to do it from home. You just tell me what everybody's doing and I'll do it while you go train them. Because I didn't want him to see me try to do a squat. And so his first question to me was, what's your goal? What do you want out of it? And I said, I want to be able to get myself up if I fall down, because I had read so many ladies talking about that on the support groups, that they wouldn't be able to physically get their bodies off the floor if they fell. And that was one of my biggest concerns. And he looked at me and he said, we can do that. So that's how it started. He was going to do a Saturday class. And I said, what are we doing today, coach? And he said, you're going to start off really slow. We're going to modify what you do. And CrossFit has a warm up, and it's 3 rounds of 10 reps of push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups, squats, good morning, and Samson stretch. And he's like, I want you to do 1 round of 10. That's your goal to try to do. Just 1 round, 10 of each. I'm like, how am I supposed to do a push-up or a pull-up? And he's like, and he took me to the kitchen and he had me on the kitchen counter and he said, you're going to do them standing and you're going to have good form, because the last thing you want is any type of injury, you know. And this is still at the point when I'm not able to stand for very long and I can't walk the length of the driveway. You know, it is ground zero. And so I started to do that. He watched me do a couple of them and he's like, all right, that form looks good. You have to keep that form. And so off he went, and I proceeded to do the rest of the round. I was so nervous I wasn't going to be able to do the squat, so I held on to the railing, and I'm sure it was not a very deep squat, but I did what I could do. And when he came home, I told him, I said, I even was able to do a squat, and he's like, show me. And so I showed him, and that's really where it all started. And I didn't want to go and be, gosh, God forbid I be around his athletes, you know, 1, worried that I wouldn't be able to keep up, but 2, worried about what they might think, you know, of the person who's teaching them that's his wife. You know, you have that, it's horrible. It's a horrible thing to go through. And I remember him saying, you should just come. You know, I can still modify the workouts. And for a long time, I was like, nope, not going to do it. And so my friend and her husband came over, and they would come over Wednesday nights. And so we would do CrossFit in the backyard. And I remember trying to walk around the circumference of my house was one of the parts of the workout that I had to do. And, you know, it's like, no way am I going to be able to do this. It's like, then it was, all right, we're going to walk the driveway and back. And we're going to do that a couple of times. That's part of the workout. And I remember walking it in just tears, and he's on one side of the driveway and I'm on the other side. And we're just going up and down. And I remember thinking, this is it. It's showing me that the gradual progression is there. You know, I'm getting stronger. I'm getting more mobile. I'm regaining the stuff that I had lost, you know, and that's huge. You know, when you first start and you think, I can't even stand for a couple of minutes. I get a stool in front of the dishes to do the dishes. I'd have to sit down to wash the dishes. So to go from that, you're thinking it's too much when you look at where you want to be, you know, you're like, there's no way. And I can barely stand. How am I going to get, you know, to do what I really want to do? But when you start to do it, you see those little progressions and they fuel you. And you're like, okay, I'm walking to the mailbox and back. I couldn't do that 3 months ago, you know? So you get you get really motivated. And like we started, I want to say it was March of 2013. And by, I think it was May, my daughter, she was little at the time, her school does an annual 5K called the Ryan's Run. And she wanted to do it, and she wanted her dad to sign up with her. And so the two of them signed up to do this 5K. And I was going to go, and I was going to wait and cheer them on. And so I'm pretty stubborn. And I didn't like the idea of just sitting there waiting for them to do the race. That made me feel less than or something, you know? And so I had said to him in the car, when do you think I'll be able to do a 5K? And his response was, well, if you keep training the way you are, by next year, you'll be able to do this race with us. And I was like, that's not good enough. So I said, how about this? How about I try to do the race? And it was at our local park. And so they have like benches everywhere along the way. And I said, I'll just go until I can't go anymore. And then if you have to come with the car and get me, then that's what we'll do. And he's like, okay. So the gun goes off, and my daughter, you know, she's pretty young at this point. She goes running off, and I'm like, you have to stay with her because, you know, now his mama bear freaked out thinking my little kid's out there by herself and somebody's going to abduct her. So I'm like, you have to, you know, stay with her. And in his heart, he's like, but I need to be with you, you know? And so it was really a struggle for him for that. And so he took off and went with her. And, you know, I'm just walking. I'm not running. I'm walking. And I maybe get just not very long distance. And I'm like, whew, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do this. My back is really sore. And so they kind of swung back around to get with me and to walk with me. And he's like, that's all right. You stop, you stretch out a little bit, stretch out that back, do what we do during the warm-ups and workouts and stuff, and then see how you can go again. And it worked. My back eased up. I stretched it out. I continued on a little further, got a little tighter again, stretched it out again, took time, and then kept going. And I remember the two of them, you know, because we couldn't see her. As long as we could see her up ahead, we were okay. When we couldn't see her, I'm like, you need to go. And so at the end, it was just me. I was the last person. And I wasn't signed up, so it's not like they were supposed to stay open or anything. But my husband, such a sweetheart, he asked the clock people to leave the clock running until I came through. And it started to like rain. And I remember seeing like the 3-mile marker, you're almost there. And I was just like, I can do this. I can finish this. And I came around the corner, and my daughter and husband are in tears. They're like running up to me. And then as a family, we like all crossed the finish line together. And it was like an hour and 16 minutes. And that's how I got started in trying to do further. And that made me want to have a fitness goal. Like that first year, my fitness goal was to be able to get off the floor if I fell, you know, and then the next year was I wanted to do a 5K. And so that wasn't even on my radar. It just became my goal. And then I found out about Learn, because they had a virtual 5K that they did every year in New York City. And I wanted to see if I could improve the time from the one I had done in May. And I think it was that fall. And I signed up to do that. And I like raised money I was on the Australia group, the Lipedema Australia ladies group. That's the first group that I was on. And I was like, I'm going to do this race. And I think Maggie McCary, she was like the biggest advocate. Every time I'd write something, she would comment just so positively about what I was doing. And she reached out to me privately and said, hey, I saw you on the Australia group, and I think what you're doing, and you know, it's like how we talked about it. It was having action, you know, taking a step towards something, you know, you're being proactive. You're trying to work towards what it is that you want to achieve. So it makes you feel less like a victim. It's an emotional response. It's not just the physical growth, but the emotional response of you taking action. There's just nothing better.
And you
And
found some hope. Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
that's all right. But she was the one who had said, hey, I'm really local to you, so I'd love to meet up with you. But she also like motivated me. Everything she wrote, she's like, what you write about, she said, inspires me, and you need to write more. And at the time, I had quit that job. It got to be too stressful. And I had gotten Oprah Winfrey's magazine, and in there was this article about, excuse me, NaNoWriMo, the National Writing Challenge that happens every November. And you're supposed to write 50,000 word novel in the month of November. And I signed right up for that. And so I had been talking about that in the Australia group. And she commented about that and talked about how I wrote very positively about what I was doing and taking the steps. And it was different than what she had been hearing from other people. And so she had reached out to me and said, one, I want to get to know you. I want, have you come to my home. And two, you need to write. You need to write right now. Like, she's like, I couldn't sleep last night because I was thinking about you. And she's the one who spurred me on to start the blog, and so you find people.
How long ago did you start the blog?
2013.
Okay.
July of Independence Day, July 4th of 2013. And the first blog is like Happy Independence Day to me or something like that. Because I had written because I started seeing like positive results in what I was doing and how I wasn't having worse symptoms, like the fear of I'm possibly going to make myself worse if I do this, but I don't feel like I have any other choice because I'm dying. I'm slowly dying here. And we were looking for that. We were looking to see, all right, when something hurts, is it a muscular hurt because you just did 50 squats? Or is it some leg pain that might be lipedema? Learning the difference between those is really key, because anytime, even now, if there's any indication that it's causing pain that is not like a normal muscle response, I stopped doing it. At one point I was really excited because we were jump roping. I hadn't jump roped since I was a kid, and I'm jump roping. They're doing double unders, which is, you spin the rope twice to every one jump that you do. I just wanted to jump rope, and I was doing it. I was so proud of myself, and it was like maybe 2 weeks of us doing that, and then I had the most severe pain in my feet. It was like plantar fasciitis or something. It wasn't quite that, but that's what it felt like. And I'm like, this is not good. And I had to stop. So I don't jump rope.
This is an important point, because we are doing this interview to encourage and inspire people. What you're also saying is do it under the guidance of a trained professional. Your husband, fortunately, was a trained professional to help coach you, but also listen to your body.
Yeah, you are your biggest advocate. If there's anything I can tell any new person, that's what it is. Because he only knows what I tell him. He is amazing at saying, all right, you can't physically do a push-up, but you can simulate that same technique and effort by doing it like this. So he's fantastic at modifications. He can look, because sometimes it's body related. It's not a physical strength that I can't do anything, but it's the shape of my legs that don't let me do a certain move, and I'll be like, my leg's just getting in the way. There's part of me that's not like what you experience because you don't have this extra mass that I have to move around. And so you have to be able to have somebody who you can be open with to say that, and they know you're not just trying to have a cop out, don't want to do the work. I'm pretty stubborn, and he knows I'm the last person to try to cop out and not do the work. I want to do the work harder than anybody else because I want to prove I'm just as good as any other person that doesn't have this condition. But yeah, it's really important for you. Early on, I had a journal. I had all my measurements from MLD, any supplements that I tried, any responses that I had to that, because you start to get overwhelmed with all the options that are out there. Some will work for you, and that's fantastic, and you want to know that. Some won't, and you want to know that. So, you know, in 2 months from now, when somebody says, hey, I got this new supplement, and you're like, oh, I'm going to go try that. You've already tried it. You just don't remember that you tried it because you're trying 9,000 other things that you're doing. So keep a journal. It helped me so much. It was a great place to go back and say, oh, look, I've actually lost, 30 inches in my legs in the span of 6 months. Or I tried that and it didn't do well for me. It made me have this kind of reaction. Or I tried this and I didn't really notice anything. So do I keep trying that? Is there a combination thing that might be an issue? And then, the same thing with fitness. You look at, all right, whenever I do squats, my knee pops out. Well, then maybe squats aren't right for you. You got to find something else that works for you. Or running is not good for me. Anything with the pounding, the jump rope, the running, it's just not good for me. It doesn't just hurt muscles, it hurts other parts of my legs. And I don't know if that's just lipedema or just because I am a larger person trying to do that. It's too much, pounding on my legs, but it's stuff that I just immediately stop. But, your coach, your trainer, sometimes you don't have that option. So you have to start somewhere. So you start slow and you start seeing how you respond. If I take a walk around the mailbox, if I take a walk around the house, if I take a walk around the neighborhood, next day, how am I feeling? All right, I'm not feeling so good. I'm feeling really tired. Okay, that might be normal if I'm not used to taking a walk around the neighborhood. When I first started, every time we would do a workout, I would need a nap. Sometimes it'd be a 2-hour nap. I would be exhausted. And I would come home and I'd be like, I'm so tired. I'm just so tired. He's like, go lay down. And I would go lay down. That was one of the things that helped me realize that I was actually improving. I didn't necessarily see a greater distance or a quicker speed or any of that stuff, but I needed less naps. So there's things that you have to be mindful of. You have to be, because doctors aren't going to help you. People out in the world aren't going to understand. You have to be your own best resource. What works for me? What can I do? How do I respond?
In the crystal ball of the future, it's a community that is well recognized and understood by the medical community. I think that there is a real learning curve, and people like you are really helping with that. What does your crystal ball look like? I know you have, look, you're doing triathlons now, aren't you?
Yeah, I started a triathlon. This June would have been our 5th year. And I'm not sure what's going to happen with the whole virus and stuff. So I'm a little nervous about that. But yeah, that was one of the years where I was like, all right, what's this year's goal? Every January I'd be like, all right, I want a physical challenge. I want something to work towards. One year it was flipping a 300-pound tractor tire by myself because I could only do it with my training mates because I started to go to his workouts with his athletes, and they are all lovely. CrossFit people are wonderful people because they get the amount of work that goes into what you're doing, and they don't care what you look like. They know and they relate to you because you're doing it too. It's hard to get that across because I know early on I was like, no way am I going to go try to do CrossFit in front of athletes, but it's been
changed your mind about yourself.
Yeah.
Up a whole world to you.
Yeah, I remember because like I said, I started out doing push-ups on the kitchen sink. And when we train in the winter, it's at his dojo. So there's, not cushions, mats on the floor, and there's no shoes allowed in the dojo kind of thing. And so they would bring in great big stacks of mats for me to sit on to do sit-ups. So I went from doing sit-ups on a yoga ball to sit-ups on a stack of mats. And then one day we didn't have the stack of mats. He had loaned out the mats to another dojo. And so I got on the floor and I did my sit-ups. And I had been doing them that way for, I think maybe it was like 6 months. And one of the guys was doing them because every workout you start out with that, warm up that we talked about was my initial workout. And he sat next to me and he sat up and he was almost, tears in his eyes. And he's like, when did you start being able to do sit-ups on the floor? And they're right there with you. They're like so moved at the progression and they see all the work that goes into it. It's just amazing.
So you've found your tribe, but then you have accumulated a tribe. I mean, you're the woman that was Googling and finally saw someone that looks like you and got excited. Now people are Googling and finding you and finding hope. What does that feel like?
It's pretty amazing. When I decided to write the blog, it was primarily because I wasn't getting anywhere. I was wanting to tell everybody, you got to try to do this. I know they're telling you not to do this, but here I am. I'm just telling you what I'm doing and how it's working. And, they're scared. They didn't want to get worse. And here is this, who am I to come in and say, you should try doing some squats. You should try, doing this. And so I just wanted to just tell people because I didn't want anybody to have to do what I did and go finally get diagnosed. And you're so far beyond that now you have lymphedema too. And it's just a lot harder for somebody at a later stage to fight back than it is for an earlier stage. If you got earlier diagnosis and got earlier treatment started, So when I was thinking about doing that, I tried writing to my newspaper. That was my big idea. I'll spread awareness in my town. Nobody wanted to. They didn't. I wrote my letters to the editor. I tried pitching for magazines and I just would get crickets, nothing. Nobody wanted to do it. And so when I was talking on the group about it, and then Maggie was like, you need to do this. I'm like, she just inspired me. And I just said, I'm going to do exactly what I found. I found somebody who took the time and the energy to write a blog and explain all the stuff. I'm going to pay it forward. I'm going to do the same thing. And that's why I started my blog. And then I was like, so fearful that I was being annoying or scaring people in the support groups because all I wanted to talk about was fitness. They didn't care. You have that friend who
called Lipedema Fitness, right?
I started it because of that. I started my Lipedema fitness group because I wanted it, one, to be obvious. I'm not like a regular Lipedema group where you come in and, you talk about all this stuff. It's specifically focused to staying active and, combating what we were being told not to do because it worked so well for me, and the biggest kick last year was in the Facebook group. When you sign on, you have to say it's only for people who have lipedema.
I know.
And
I would like to join because I don't have lipedema, but I was so captivated. So go ahead.
So you have to answer questions if you have it, you saw, and then how did you hear about us? Last year, I almost fell over when not one, but multiple people responded, my doctor told me about you. So we went from being told not to exercise by the medical community to having doctors realize this is helping. I'm going to tell you to go seek this out. And it made me, I wrote a blog post and I had the big tractor tire picture and I wrote around the outside of it, we have come full circle to being told not to do this, to being told by the people who told us not to do this because we are getting together in a group and we are trying things and we're sharing and we're spreading awareness. And that's my whole thing is anything I can think of to spread awareness, sign me up. I will do it. I will educate patients. I will educate doctors. I will do whatever I can to help because I sure know what it feels like to wait too long to get that diagnosis. And I don't want anybody to go through that.
There is nothing more powerful than a real life story. Nobody can refute it. You are walking proof and you inspire me tremendously.
Oh,
Well, can we
thanks.
find you at lipedemafitness.com?
I did. I started a website again to try to just get the word out. So there's a website, there's the blog, there's the closed support group. Last year I did some conference presentations with Juzo. Juzo had reached out to me. They saw the triathlon information and they wanted to help spread the word. They're wonderful. And they had us go to their conference for fitters and physical therapists. So I got to share my story with them. And immediately I started getting people, you know, who didn't have lipedema, but they were in the field and they wanted to know more and help. And it was really hard for me to turn people away saying, I'm sorry, it's only for those who have lipedema. So I started a public Facebook page so that I could share whatever I could and try to get the word out there. And then I started an Instagram page and I share my videos. And I mean, when I started out doing this, I just talked about it. And I'm talking about a WOD and an AMRAP and kettlebells and med balls and Russian swings. And everybody's like, what are you talking about? So then I started taking pictures of things and helping, you know, that, and then I started taking videos of what I was doing. And you go a long way from, you know, not liking your picture taken to doing squats in full view of the world. So I post it all. I've just, if it will help somebody, there I am squatting. There I am trying to do some sit-ups.
You're a remarkable person. And
Oh, thanks.
for all the praise and credit for what you've done. You've got 5,500 followers on your private group, which is an amazing landmark. And I think about all the hope that you're bringing to each of them. You said something when we talked on the phone earlier, that this decision to take control of your fitness saved your life.
Yeah, it really did. I say repeatedly, one of the things that I hashtag on my posts every Saturday is, I love CrossFit. CrossFit saved my life. It's so true. But it doesn't mean that CrossFit is for everybody. It just means that it gives you an outlet to work towards something. You know, even like being, you know, socially distancing and we're having to stay in and we can't go to the gym and we can't go to the pool, which is so critical for so many of us. You know, if we just sit there and it's happening to us, you start to feel down. You start to feel like there's nothing I can do. It's hopeless. I don't have any say in what's going on. The second you do something proactive, all right, well, I can't go to the gym. I can't go to the pool. My legs are starting to swell. It's personal experience is what's been going on with me since all this. What can I do? What else moves lymph? Honey, do you know where my rebounder is? Can you bring that up from the basement? I'm going to jump on it for 5 minutes. I don't leave the surface. My feet stay on the surface of the rebounder, and I started bouncing for 5 minutes. You know, it's just little things. I don't have to go run a marathon. I don't have to go do a triathlon. I just have to find something, go in the kitchen, turn your favorite song on, and, you know, dance, do whatever, but take action for yourself. It'll change your life.
So we're going to wrap this interview up, and I want to give you the floor to speak to someone out there who just Googled and finally found somebody like them. Maybe they're not willing yet to get into exercise, but talk directly to that person out there who finally found someone that looks like them. What do you say to them?
Don't get overwhelmed. We're really glad you're here. You're not alone. There are things that you can do. I would suggest trying to find a physical therapist that understands what it is. Physical therapists are the ones, I think they're the lifesavers for all of us, because they get the training that the doctors aren't getting. You know, it's not only the doctor's fault. The education for them is not there either. So find that therapist, find somebody who hears you. Come in here and share with us. Know that you're not alone. That was a big deal. Just knowing I wasn't alone. I wasn't, this, because you never see anybody else. And that's the other thing. Get out there. Take your lipedema body out there and do things for yourself. Don't let a total stranger or fear what they're going to say change you for not doing something. And just think about what it means for other people who don't have lipedema to see our bodies doing these wonderful things. Whether it's going out to dinner with your family or taking a walk in your neighborhood or running a triathlon, whatever it is, you start to change our society because then they start seeing. And so maybe the next time they see somebody who looks like you, they're not thinking poorly. They're thinking, oh, remember that girl from the park? In the summer we work out in the park. And at first I would hide behind trees. I was so afraid to be seen, bending over and doing things. Now I'm like, come do this with us. So
Pattie,
you're not alone. That's probably what I would say. You're not alone.
someone that deserves to be seen and heard. And I hope that we can continue to work together to spread your message of hope.
I really appreciate that you guys are doing that. I really appreciate it.
There's nobody that can talk. I can study it and study it and study it. And I've spent the last year studying it. But you have changed my life because you've given me a whole different vision of how we can help. So I'm going to end the recording, but stay on the line.
Okay.
I want to thank everybody for tuning in, and most of all to you, Pattie. Thank you.
Thank you.